Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift across something so vast, so empty, that it makes everything else on Earth feel small and cozy. We're going to cross the Pacific Ocean, the biggest body of water on our planet, and we're going to do it the way the ancient Polynesian navigators did, without compasses, without sextants, without GPS, without even a wristwatch to tell us what time it is. Just you, a canoe, and the stars, and maybe some waves, and birds, and a few dozen other things that you're about to learn how to read like a language. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support helps me keep making these gentle journeys through time. Where are you watching from tonight? What time is it there? Drop a comment below. I love seeing how these stories travel around the world, connecting us across different time zones and seasons. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a small coral atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's perhaps one of the Marshall Islands, or maybe the Caroline Islands, somewhere that feels like the absolute middle of nowhere, because it basically is. The sand is white and crushed coral fine. The coconut palms sway overhead in a breeze that smells like salt and distant places. Behind you, a tiny village of thatched huts and weathered people. In front of you, nothing, just ocean. Ocean that goes on forever. Ocean that covers 1/3 of Earth's surface. Ocean so big that if you were standing on the shore in Asia and looking east, and someone else were standing on the shore in the Americas and looking west, you'd both be staring at the same body of water, and neither of you could see the other side. This is the Pacific, and it's so empty that all the land masses of Earth dropped into it would barely make a splash. There's more water here than everything else combined, and you're about to set sail across it. You look out at that horizon so perfectly flat, so perfectly empty, so perfectly the same in every direction. It's the kind of view that makes you feel very small and very lost, which is exactly how most European sailors felt when they first encountered the Pacific. They called it the vast ocean, and they were terrified of it. They hugged the coastlines. They stayed within sight of land. They invented increasingly complicated machines to tell them where they were, because the ocean itself gave them no clues at all. But you're not European. You're Polynesian, and your ancestors have been crossing this ocean for thousands of years. And you know something that those terrified European sailors never understood. The ocean isn't empty. It's full of information. It's full of signs. It's full of a language that you can read if you know how to look. And right now, you're about to learn how to read it. The year is, let's say, around 1200 CE, or maybe 800 CE. Or maybe 1600 CE, the exact date doesn't matter, because Polynesian navigation was happening for a very long time, and the techniques you're about to learn remained largely unchanged for centuries. Historians still debate exactly when the great period of Polynesian expansion occurred, with some arguing it happened earlier and others pushing for later dates. But what everyone agrees on is this: it was one of humanity's greatest achievements in exploration and navigation. You're a young person from this atoll, and you've been selected to train as a navigator, a wayfinder, someone who can read the ocean and stars and find land where others see only emptiness. It's an enormous honor, but it's also an enormous responsibility. In a few weeks, or months, or years, depending on how long your training takes, you'll be standing on the deck of a canoe, guiding your people across hundreds or thousands of miles of open ocean. If you get it right, everyone lives. If you get it wrong, everyone dies, and there's no in between. So you're standing on this beach, looking out at that empty horizon, and you're feeling, well, you're feeling a lot of things. Excitement, definitely. Fear, absolutely. A strange sort of calm that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and also a really intense urge to eat something, because learning to navigate the world's largest ocean works up an appetite. Here's something that might surprise you. At its peak, the Polynesian world stretched from what we now call Hawaii in the north to New Zealand in the south, and from Easter Island in the east to New Guinea in the west. That's a triangle of ocean covering more than 10 million square miles, and every single island in that enormous area was found and settled by people navigating without instruments, just by reading the ocean and sky. This is why Polynesian navigation is considered one of the greatest achievements in human history, and also why historians and anthropologists still argue about exactly how they did it. The crazy thing is that European explorers, when they finally arrived in the Pacific, were completely baffled by what they found. They found people on tiny islands that were thousands of miles apart, people who spoke related languages, people who had similar cultural practices, people who clearly knew each other or had known each other at some point in the past. But how? How did people without compasses or sextants or written maps find their way across the largest ocean on Earth? The Europeans decided that it must have been accidental, that Polynesian canoes must have been blown off course by storms, and that the islands were settled by people who were lost and lucky. This was a theory that persisted for centuries, and honestly, it's pretty insulting. It assumes that ancient people weren't smart enough to navigate on purpose, that they just stumbled across an area the size of Eurasia by accident. It also ignores the fact that Polynesian navigators made round trips. They sailed from one island to another and then back again, which is not something you can do by accident. Here's a fun little fact that historians love. When Captain James Cook arrived in Hawaii in 1778, he found people who already knew about the existence of other islands. They knew the directions to Tahiti. They knew the directions to other islands in the archipelago. They had names for places they'd never been to, but that their ancestors had visited. Cook was amazed by this, and he eventually realized that the Polynesians must have had some system of navigation that he didn't understand. What he didn't realize, what nobody in Europe understood at the time, was that this system was thousands of years old and incredibly sophisticated. And here's something that historians still debate. Was Polynesian navigation a secret knowledge held only by a select few, or was it more widely known, something that most sailors understood to some degree? There's evidence for both theories, and different islands had different traditions. What we know for sure is that the knowledge was precious, that it was passed down carefully from master to apprentice, and that losing it meant losing the ability to travel between islands. You're standing on that beach, thinking about all of this, when an older man approaches you. He's the master navigator of your atoll. Maybe we'll call him Mao, which means wise in several Polynesian languages, though different cultures had different names for their navigators. He spent his life learning to read the ocean and sky, and now he's going to teach you. He doesn't say anything at first. He just stands beside you, looking out at that same empty horizon. Then he gestures at the ocean. "What do you see?" he asks. "You think about this." "Water," you say. "Lots of water." Mao smiles. "That's what most people see," he says. "But that's not what's there." He points at the waves. "Do you see how they're coming from the southeast? That's the trade wind swell. It's been pushing against these islands for thousands of years." He points at the sky. Do you see how the clouds are piled up on the horizon? That's a sign that there's land out there, even though you can't see it. He points at a bird flying overhead. Do you see that, Noddy? It doesn't fly far from land, which means there's land somewhere in that direction. You stare at him. You're looking at the same horizon you've been looking at your entire life, but suddenly it doesn't look empty anymore. It looks full of information. It looks like a book that you're just learning how to read. Over the next months and years, Mao tells you, you're going to learn to see what's really there. You're going to learn to read the ocean, the sky, the birds, the stars. You're going to learn to find islands that you can't see, using signs that other people don't even notice. And when you're ready, you're going to guide your people across this empty ocean, and you're going to bring them home safely. It sounds impossible. It sounds like magic. And in a way, it is, but it's also a skill, a science, a technology that's just as sophisticated as anything modern navigation uses. It's based on observation and memory and practice, and it's been refined over thousands of years, and you're about to learn it. As you stand there on that beach, with the salt wind in your face and the sound of waves in your ears, you realize something important. The horizon isn't empty. It's full of secrets, full of information, full of a language that you're about to start learning. And the first lesson is this: everything is a sign. Everything means something. The ocean is speaking to you if you know how to listen, and you're about to learn how to listen. The morning of your departure arrives, and you walk down to the beach where your canoe waits. It's not a small boat that's the first thing you notice. It's enormous. It's a Wā Kaulua, a double-hulled canoe, and it's roughly 60 feet long, though some were even larger. The two hulls are connected by a platform of wooden beams, creating a stable deck that can carry people, supplies, and even animals. It's designed for long ocean voyages, not quick trips between nearby islands, and it's beautiful. The wood is dark and polished, rubbed with coconut oil until it gleams. The lashings that hold everything together are made of braided coconut fiber, incredibly strong and flexible. The sails are woven from pandanus leaves, triangular shapes that will catch the trade winds and push you forward across the water. Everything about this canoe has been designed for a specific purpose, and that purpose is carrying you safely across thousands of miles of open ocean. You touch the hull, feeling the living warmth of the wood. This isn't just a vehicle, this is a living thing, a partner in your journey, and it's a technological marvel, one that historians and engineers still study today for its ingenious design. Here's something fascinating. The Polynesian double-hulled canoe was perfectly suited for Pacific navigation. The two hulls provided stability, preventing the canoe from capsizing in rough seas. The platform between them created space for supplies and crew. The shallow draft allowed the canoe to navigate in shallow waters near islands, and the flexible construction using lashings instead of nails meant that the canoe could flex with the waves instead of fighting against them, which reduced stress on the structure and made it less likely to break. European sailors who encountered these canoes were amazed by their speed and seaworthiness. Some early accounts describe Polynesian canoes sailing faster than European ships and maneuvering with incredible agility. And what's really interesting is that these canoes were built using Stone Age technology. No metal tools, no manufactured materials, just wood and fiber and skill and knowledge. Historians still debate exactly how large some of these canoes were. Some accounts describe canoes that could carry hundreds of people, complete with animals and plants for establishing new colonies. Others were smaller, designed for shorter voyages or fewer crew members. What everyone agrees on is that the canoe was the perfect tool for Pacific navigation, and that building one required enormous skill and knowledge. You walk around the canoe, admiring its construction. The hulls are carved from breadfruit trees or, in some cases, from entire tree trunks that have been hollowed out and shaped. The wood is chosen carefully. Breadfruit is lightweight and durable, perfect for long voyages. The lashings are made from coconut husk fiber, which is incredibly strong and resistant to salt water. Everything about this canoe has been designed with the ocean in mind. Your master navigator, Mao, approaches and stands beside you. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" he says. You nod. You've never seen anything so perfect, so suited to its purpose. "She'll take you anywhere you need to go," Mao continues, "but only if you know how to talk to her. The canoe is alive, and she has her own personality. Sometimes she'll be cooperative, sometimes she'll be stubborn. Your job is to learn her moods, to work with her instead of against her." This is something that modern sailors might find strange, but it makes perfect sense in the Polynesian worldview. The canoe isn't just a tool, it's a partner, and like any partner, it requires respect and understanding. You climb aboard the canoe, feeling the way it moves beneath you. It's not rock solid like a ship with a keel. It flexes and shifts with the water, responding to every wave and current. At first, this feels unstable, like you're standing on something that's constantly moving. But as you spend more time aboard, you begin to appreciate the wisdom of this design. The canoe moves with the water instead of fighting against it, which makes it more stable in rough seas and less likely to capsize. The crew begins to load supplies. There's water in gourds and bamboo containers, carefully sealed to prevent leaks. There's food: pounded taro, breadfruit, dried fish, coconuts. There's fishing gear, because you'll be catching fresh food along the way. There's shelter material, in case you need to rig a covering for protection from sun or rain. There are tools for repairing the canoe, if necessary. Everything has been carefully considered. Everything has its place. Historians estimate that a typical Polynesian voyage might last several weeks, possibly even months. That means carrying enough food and water for the entire crew, plus reserves in case of delays. It also means managing resources carefully, rationing water, catching fish to supplement stored food, collecting rainwater when possible. And it means knowing where you're going, because there's no resupply in the middle of the Pacific. You watch as the crew makes their final preparations. Everyone knows their role, and everyone works together with efficient precision. There's the sail master, who's responsible for handling the sails and managing the winds. There's the navigator, you, eventually, who's responsible for knowing where you are and where you're going. There are the paddlers, who provide additional power when the winds are weak. And there are the ordinary crew members, who handle the day-to-day tasks of keeping the canoe running. And then there's the master navigator Mao, in this case, who's responsible for the overall success of the voyage. He's the one with the ultimate knowledge, the one who can read the signs and guide the canoe safely to its destination. And you're his apprentice, learning everything he knows so that one day you can take on this responsibility yourself. The sun begins to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The crew takes their positions. The sail is unfurled, catching the morning breeze. The canoe begins to move, sliding away from the shore and out into the open ocean. You stand near the front of the canoe, watching your home island recede into the distance. It's a strange feeling, leaving everything you've ever known and heading out into emptiness. But you're not alone. You have your crew, your canoe, and the knowledge that generations of navigators have made this journey before you. As your island disappears below the horizon, you notice something interesting. You can still see its direction, even though you can't see the island itself. You know which way it is, and you could probably point to it accurately even after it's been gone for hours. This is called dead reckoning, keeping track of your direction and speed, so you always know where you are relative to where you started. And it's one of the fundamental techniques of navigation. Mao comes to stand beside you. Feel the motion of the canoe, he says. Can you tell which way the wind is pushing, which way the current is pulling? Can you feel the difference? You close your eyes and focus. At first, all you feel is motion, a complex mix of movements in different directions, all overlapping. But as you pay closer attention, you begin to separate the different sensations. There's the push of the wind against the sail from the east, northeast. There's the pull of the current, faint but perceptible, from the southeast. There's the rise and fall of the waves, carrying you up and down and forward and back. Good, Mao says. You're starting to feel it. The canoe is always moving in multiple directions at once. Wind from one direction, current from another, waves from a third. Your job as navigator is to understand all these different movements and to account for them. The canoe might be pointing one way, but actually moving another. You need to know the difference. This is something that modern sailors take for granted. They have instruments to tell them their actual course versus their heading. But you don't have instruments. You only have your body and your senses. So you need to learn to feel these subtle differences, to know when you're being pushed off course, and to compensate accordingly. The first day of your voyage passes in a blur of new experiences. You learn to move around the canoe without losing your balance. You learn to help with the sails, to trim them for maximum efficiency. You learn to take your turn at the helm, feeling the response of the canoe to every slight adjustment. And you begin your first lessons in navigation not just from Mao, but from the ocean itself. By nightfall, you're exhausted but exhilarated. The canoe is moving smoothly through the water. The stars are beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, and you're actually doing it. You're sailing across the Pacific Ocean, guided only by knowledge and skill and the signs around you. Mao finds you sitting near the front of the canoe, watching the stars appear. Tired? He asks. You nod. You've never worked so hard in your life. Good, he says. You should be tired. Learning the ocean is hard work, and you've only just begun. He points at the stars above. Tomorrow, you'll start learning to read those. Every star has its path, its place in the sky. If you know them, you can find your way across the entire Pacific. You look up at the stars, feeling overwhelmed by how many there are, how complex their patterns are. But then you remember what Mao said earlier. Everything is a sign. Everything means something. The stars are just another language, another way that the sky communicates with you, and you're about to learn how to read them. As you settle down to sleep on the gently rocking canoe, you think about how far you've already come, not in distance, but in understanding. This canoe, which seemed so strange and complex this morning, now feels familiar. You're beginning to understand its motions, its responses, its personality, and tomorrow you'll begin learning the stars. The ocean stretches endlessly around you, but for the first time, it doesn't feel empty. It feels full of information, full of guidance, full of signs. You're about to learn to read them all. Several days into your voyage, you're beginning to settle into the rhythm of the canoe. You wake before dawn, help with the morning tasks, eat a simple breakfast of cold taro and fish, and then take your position for the day's lessons. And today, Mao has something special to teach you, one of the most closely guarded secrets of Polynesian navigation. Come here, he says, gesturing for you to join him at the front of the canoe. I want you to close your eyes. You do as he asks, feeling the salt spray on your face, hearing the rush of water past the hull, sensing the gentle rise and fall of the canoe. Now, Mao says, tell me what you feel. You concentrate. The canoe is moving, you say. We're going forward, I think. The waves are pushing us up and down. Anything else? Mao asks. You think about this, straining to feel more, to sense what he's sensing. The wind is coming from that direction, you say, pointing. And the current is pushing us. Maybe that way. You're not confident in any of this, and Mao can tell. You're thinking too much, he says. Stop trying to figure it out with your mind and start feeling it with your body. Here, he takes your hand and places it on the hull of the canoe, just above the waterline. Feel that? He asks. At first, you feel only the smooth wood and the vibration of the canoe moving through water. But then, as you concentrate, you begin to notice something else, a subtle pattern, a rhythm, a sense of different movements overlapping. There's the main swell, coming from one direction. There's a secondary swell from another direction. There's the chop of wind-driven waves from yet another direction. All of them moving through each other, all of them creating a complex pattern of motion. Each pattern of waves has its own character, Mao explains. The trade wind swell comes from the east-southeast. It's steady and regular, and it's been pushing against our islands for thousands of years. But when waves hit an island, they bounce back. They create a different pattern, a reflected wave that moves away from the land. If you can feel that reflected wave, you can tell which direction land lies, even if you can't see it. This seems impossible, feeling waves that have bounced off islands that are hundreds of miles away. But Mao assures you it's real, and it's one of the most sophisticated techniques in the Polynesian Navigators toolkit. Here's something that historians and scientists still study. How exactly did Polynesian navigators detect these subtle wave patterns? Some researchers believe they could feel the changes in the canoe's motion through the soles of their feet, or by sitting in a particular position on the canoe. Others think they might have used test objects like a floating feather or a specially weighted line to make the waves more visible. What everyone agrees on is that this skill was developed over generations of careful observation and practice, and that it allowed navigators to sense land long before it was visible on the horizon. The key is to separate the different wave patterns, Mao tells you. You need to be able to feel the trade wind swell, and then distinguish it from any other swells or reflections. The reflected waves are usually weaker and more irregular than the main swell, but they're distinctive once you know what to look for. You spend the entire day practicing this skill, closing your eyes and trying to separate the different patterns of motion. At first, everything feels like a jumble, confusing, overwhelming, impossible to sort out. But gradually, over hours of practice, you begin to distinguish the main swell from the secondary patterns. You begin to feel the difference between waves that have traveled thousands of miles across open ocean and waves that have encountered land. Historians still debate exactly how reliable this technique was. Could a navigator really detect islands from hundreds of miles away just by feeling wave patterns? Some modern experiments suggest yes, navigators trained in traditional methods have been able to sense land from remarkable distances. Others point out that wave patterns can be affected by many factors, not just islands, storms, currents, changes in wind direction. What's clear is that Polynesian navigators considered this a crucial skill, one that required years of practice and constant attention. By sunset, you're exhausted but triumphant. You've felt your first reflected wave, a subtle difference in the motion of the canoe, a faint pattern that seems to come from the north. Mao confirms that you're sensing it correctly, and you feel a surge of pride. You're actually doing it. You're reading the ocean. That's good progress, Mao says, but you've only begun. There are many different wave patterns to learn, each with its own character. Some swells come from distant storms. Some are created by the shape of the ocean floor. Some are caused by the passage of the canoe itself. You need to learn them all, and you need to learn to separate them in your mind. This feels overwhelming, but Mao reassures you. You don't learn everything at once. You learn one pattern, then another, then another. Over time, you build a mental library of wave patterns, and you can read them like a book. Someday you'll be able to close your eyes and know exactly where you are, just from the motion of the canoe. As you settle down to sleep that night, you practice feeling the waves beneath you. There's the main trade wind swell, steady and regular. There's a smaller swell from a different direction, and faintly, very faintly, there's something else, a subtle pattern that might be a reflected wave from an island somewhere to the north. You're not sure if you're really feeling it or if you're imagining it, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're learning to pay attention, to notice what others miss, to read the ocean in a way that most people never will. And that's the essence of navigation, not magic, but careful observation and practice. The canoe rocks gently beneath you, carrying you forward across the endless Pacific. And somewhere out there, invisible beyond the horizon, islands wait to be found not by luck, but by skill. Night falls over the Pacific, and the sky fills with stars, more stars than you've ever seen, more than you knew existed. They stretch from horizon to horizon in a dazzling display that takes your breath away. And then Mao drops a bombshell. You need to memorize them, he says. You stare at him. All of them? Mao laughs. No, not all of them. But you need to know the important ones, the stars that will guide you across the ocean. And you need to know where they rise and where they set, because that's how you'll know which way you're going. This is the star compass, one of the fundamental tools of Polynesian navigation. Unlike European navigators, who used complex instruments to measure the angle of stars above the horizon, Polynesian navigators used a mental compass based on the rising and setting points of stars. They divided the horizon into segments, each associated with a particular star, and they used this mental map to maintain their heading across vast distances. Come with me, Mao says, and he leads you to a clear area of the canoe's platform. Imagine that you're standing at the center of a giant circle, he explains. The circle is the horizon, and it's divided into directions. Each direction is marked by a star, either where it rises in the east or where it sets in the west. He points to the eastern horizon, where a bright star is just rising. That star is Altair, he says. In our language, we call it by a different name, but the important thing is that it marks one of our compass points. When it rises directly east, we know we're facing toward a particular set of islands. When it rises a little north of east, we know we're heading toward a different destination. This is ingenious, using the stars as a compass without needing any physical instrument, but it requires enormous knowledge. You need to know which stars rise and set at which points on the horizon, and you need to be able to recognize them instantly, even when the sky is cloudy or the moon is bright. Historians still debate exactly how many directions the Polynesian star compass had. Some accounts describe 32 directional points, 16 on the east side for rising stars, and 16 on the west side for setting stars. Others suggest simpler systems with fewer points. What everyone agrees on is that this mental compass was incredibly precise, allowing navigators to maintain their course within a few degrees even after weeks at sea. The key is to build the compass in your mind, Mao explains. You need to be able to close your eyes and see it a complete circle around you, with each direction marked by a familiar star. When you know where each star rises and sets, you can always find your way. He begins teaching you the major stars, one by one. There's Altair in the east. There's Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, rising in the southeast. There's the Southern Cross, which doesn't rise or set, but circles around the southern celestial pole. Each star has its place in the compass, its role in navigation. And here's something fascinating. The Polynesian star compass wasn't static. It changed depending on where you were and where you were going. A navigator sailing from Tahiti to Hawaii would use different stars than a navigator sailing from Hawaii to Tahiti. The compass was flexible, adaptable to different routes and different destinations. Historians still debate exactly how navigators memorized all this information. Some think they used songs or chants that encoded the star positions. Others believe they built physical models using shells or stones to represent the stars and studied them until the information was internalized. What's clear is that this knowledge was precious and carefully protected, passed down from master to apprentice through years of intensive training. You spend night after night learning the stars. At first, it's overwhelming. There are so many of them, and they all look similar. But gradually, you begin to recognize the patterns. You learn which stars are bright and which are dim. You learn which stars rise together and which rise at different times. You learn to identify them even when clouds obscure parts of the sky. The stars are your friends, Mao tells you. Treat them with respect. Learn their names. Learn their habits, and they'll never lead you astray. One particularly clear night, Mao decides to test you. Close your eyes, he says. Point to where Altair rises. You close your eyes and visualize the star compass you've been building in your mind. You picture the eastern horizon, and you see the place where Altair rises a particular point, slightly north of due east. You point. Perfect, Mao says. Now point to where Sirius sets. You visualize the western horizon. Find the place where Sirius dips below the sea, a point in the south-southwest. You point. Excellent, Mao says. You're learning. This feels like a small victory, but you know it's only the beginning. There are dozens of stars to memorize, each with its precise rising and setting points. And that's not all. You also need to learn how the stars move through the sky during the night, how their positions change with the seasons, how to use them in combination with other navigation techniques. Historians have documented that some Polynesian navigators could name over 150 stars and describe their significance for navigation. This wasn't just memorization, it was a deep understanding of the night sky, an intimate familiarity with the patterns and cycles of the celestial sphere. And it was knowledge that took years to acquire. As the weeks pass, you begin to feel more confident with the stars. You can recognize the major constellations. You know which stars to use for which directions. You can even find your way on cloudy nights by using the few stars that are visible through gaps in the clouds. One night, you're standing watch alone on the canoe. The crew is sleeping and Mao is resting. You're the only one awake, and it's your job to keep the canoe on course. You look up at the stars, visualizing the mental compass you've built. You can see where each major star should be, and when you look in that direction, there it is. You know which way you're going, and you know you're on course. And in that moment, you feel something shift inside you. You're not just learning navigation anymore, you're becoming a navigator. The stars are no longer just points of light in the sky. They're markers, guides, friends. They're part of your mental map, part of your understanding of the world. Mao wakes and comes to stand beside you. You're doing well, he says. The stars are becoming part of you. You nod. You don't have the words to explain how you feel, but he seems to understand. The star compass is just the beginning, he continues. There are other ways to use the stars, ways to find your latitude, ways to determine how far north or south you've traveled. But first, you need to master the basics. You need to know the compass so well that you can see it even when your eyes are closed. You know he's right. There's still so much to learn, so many stars to memorize, so many patterns to internalize. But you're making progress, and that's what matters. The canoe sails on through the night, guided by stars that have guided Polynesian navigators for thousands of years. And somewhere ahead, invisible in the darkness, your destination waits. You'll find it not by luck, but by knowledge, by skill, by the stars that light your way. You've been at sea for weeks now, and the star compass has become second nature. You can point to the rising and setting points of major stars without even thinking about it. You can maintain your course through the night, adjusting the canoe's heading as the stars move across the sky. But now Mao is about to teach you something even more remarkable, a technique that will let you know exactly how far north or south you are, without any instruments at all. Tonight, Mao says, I'm going to teach you about zenith stars. The concept is simple enough in theory. Different stars are directly overhead at different latitudes. If you know which star passes directly overhead, that is, through your zenith, the point straight above your head, you can determine your latitude. This is one of the most sophisticated techniques in Polynesian navigation, and it's remarkably precise. Come with me, Mao says, and he leads you to a spot on the canoe where the view of the sky is unobstructed. Lie down, he instructs, and look straight up. You do as he says, lying flat on your back and gazing upward. The stars stretch endlessly above you, a dizzying display that makes it hard to focus on any single point. Now, Mao says, watch carefully as the canoe moves. See how the stars appear to shift. At first, you don't see what he means. The stars all look stationary, fixed points of light in the sky. But as you continue to watch, you begin to notice something subtle. Some stars near the horizon are rising or setting, moving up or down. But the stars directly overhead, those are staying in place. They're like the pivot point around which the entire sky seems to rotate. That's your zenith, Mao explains. The point straight above you, and whatever star is at that point tells you where you are, how far north or south you are on the face of the earth. He points to a bright star nearly overhead. That star is called Arcturus. In our language we have a different name for it, but what matters is this. When Arcturus is at your zenith, you're at a particular latitude, the latitude of our home island. If you sail north, Arcturus will move south in your sky. If you sail south, Arcturus will move north. You can track your position just by watching where it appears each night. This is brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of measuring the angle of a star above the horizon, which would require instruments, you simply note which star is directly overhead. If it's the wrong star for your destination, you adjust your course north or south until the correct star reaches your zenith. Historians consider this one of the most impressive achievements of Polynesian navigation. The concept of zenith stars shows a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and geometry, an understanding that allowed Polynesian navigators to sail to specific latitudes with remarkable precision. Here's something that historians still debate. Exactly how many zenith stars did Polynesian navigators use? Some accounts suggest that each major island group had its own zenith star, a star that passed directly overhead when you were at that island's latitude. To sail from one island to another, you'd sail north or south until your destination's zenith star was overhead, then sail east or west along that latitude until you reached the island. Others believe the system was more flexible, with navigators using a range of stars to estimate their position. What everyone agrees on is that this technique required detailed knowledge of the night sky. You needed to know which stars were zenith stars for which islands. You needed to be able to identify them instantly, even in less than perfect conditions. And you needed to understand how the stars moved through the sky during the night and how their positions changed with the seasons. Let me show you an example, Mao says. Hawaii has its own zenith star, a star called Hokulea in our language, which you might know as Arcturus. When Hokulea is directly overhead, you're at the latitude of Hawaii. To find Hawaii, you sail north until Hokulea reaches your zenith, then maintain that latitude as you sail east. He points to another star lower in the sky. That one is a crux, the brightest star in the Southern Cross. When a crux is at your zenith, you're much farther south near the latitude of New Zealand. So if we wanted to sail to New Zealand, we'd sail south until a crux was overhead, then continue south at that latitude. You begin to understand the power of this technique. By memorizing which stars correspond to which latitudes, you can navigate to any destination in the Polynesian world. It's like having an invisible latitude line stretched across the sky, a line that you can follow without any instruments. Historians have documented that Polynesian navigators used zenith stars to make remarkably precise voyages. For example, when sailing from Tahiti to Hawaii, a distance of over 2,500 miles, navigators would sail north until the zenith star for Hawaii was overhead, then maintain that latitude all the way to the islands. This required incredible skill and patience, but it was reliable and repeatable. Not every star is a useful zenith star, Mao continues. Some stars are too dim to see clearly. Some are too close to other bright stars, making them hard to identify. But there are enough good ones to serve as guides for all the major island groups. He begins teaching you the zenith stars for different destinations. There's Hokulea for Hawaii. There's other stars for Tahiti, for New Zealand, for the Marquesas, for Easter Island. Each star is like a celestial signpost, marking a latitude that will lead you to a particular destination. You spend nights practicing this technique, lying on your back and watching the stars move past your zenith. At first, it's hard to tell exactly which star is directly overhead. You're on a moving canoe, and the motion makes everything feel unsteady. But gradually, you learn to compensate for the motion of the canoe, to identify the true zenith point, to note which star occupies that position. One night, you realize that Arcturus, the zenith star for your home latitude, has shifted slightly south in your sky. This means you've drifted north of your intended course. You adjust the canoe's heading, turning slightly south, and watch over subsequent nights as Arcturus returns to your zenith. Mao nods approvingly. "Good," he says. "You're beginning to understand. The zenith stars never lie. They tell you exactly where you are, north to south, as long as you know how to read them." This knowledge feels empowering. You're no longer just drifting on a featureless ocean, hoping to stumble across land. You have a system, a reliable, repeatable method for finding your way to any destination in the vast Polynesian world. Historians still marvel at the sophistication of this system. It represents a deep understanding of celestial navigation, developed centuries before European explorers began using similar techniques. And it was all done without instruments, just careful observation, memorization, and practice. As you lie on your back watching the stars, you feel connected to generations of navigators who used these same stars to find their way across the Pacific. Each star is a link to the past, a guide for the present, and a promise for the future. You're not alone on this vast ocean. You have the stars, and they know the way. The canoe sails on, guided by zenith stars that have marked latitudes for thousands of years, and somewhere ahead, at the latitude marked by a particular star, your destination waits. Night after night, you've been learning the stars, their patterns, their movements, their secrets. Your star compass is becoming reliable, your knowledge of zenith stars growing. But what about daytime? How do you navigate when the stars are invisible? The sun is a star too, Mao reminds you one morning, and it can guide you just as well as the night stars if you know how to read it. You're about to learn daytime navigation, a set of techniques that are just as sophisticated as star navigation but very different in execution. The sun doesn't rise at the same point on the horizon every day. Its position changes with the seasons, moving north and south in a predictable annual cycle, and its path through the sky varies depending on your latitude. These variations might seem like complications, but to a skilled navigator, they're additional sources of information. First, Mao explains, you need to understand the sun's annual cycle. In our part of the world, the sun moves north in what you might call June and south in what you might call December. It's not random, it's predictable, regular, repeating every year. This predictable movement is actually very useful. If you know how far north or south the sun rises at different times of year, you can use that information to determine your direction. The sun's rising and setting points become part of your compass, just like the stars. Historians still debate exactly how Polynesian navigators tracked the sun's annual cycle. Some think they used physical markers, stones or posts, aligned with the sun's position at different times of year. Others believe they memorized the sun's path relative to landmarks on their home islands. What's clear is that they understood the sun's movements and used them for navigation. Second, Mao continues, you need to understand how the sun's path changes with latitude. Here, near the equator, the sun passes nearly overhead every day. But as you travel north or south, its path through the sky becomes more tilted. You can use this to estimate your latitude, just like you use zenith stars at night. This is subtle but powerful. Near the equator, the sun is almost directly overhead at noon, casting minimal shadows. As you travel north, the sun appears lower in the southern sky at noon, casting longer shadows to the north. As you travel south, the opposite happens. By paying attention to the sun's angle at noon, you can estimate how far north or south you are. Historians have noted that Polynesian navigators could estimate their latitude within a couple of degrees using these techniques, remarkably precise, given that they had no instruments to measure angles. They did it through observation and experience, developing a feel for the sun's position that no instrument could replicate. Third, Mao says, and this is important, the sun creates waves on the water. The wind, generated by the sun's heating of the ocean, creates specific wave patterns that you can read just like the swell patterns. This is something you hadn't considered, that the sun itself creates navigational information. The sun heats different parts of the ocean unevenly, creating temperature differences that drive winds. Those winds create waves, and those waves can be read like any other wave pattern. Watch the water, Mao instructs. Do you see how the waves are coming from the east-southeast? That's the trade wind, driven by the sun heating the equatorial ocean. It's reliable, steady, predictable. You can always orient yourself using the trade wind waves. This is incredibly useful. Even on cloudy days when the sun itself is barely visible, you can use the waves it creates to orient yourself. The trade wind becomes another compass point, another reference in your mental map. Historians have documented how Polynesian navigators used multiple methods simultaneously: stars, sun, waves, birds, clouds, to triangulate their position. No single method was perfect, but together they created a robust system that could handle a wide range of conditions. Now, let me show you something practical, Mao says. We're sailing east-northeast toward a destination at a higher latitude than our starting point. During the day, I use the sun's rising position to maintain our east-west heading, and I monitor the sun's angle at noon to track our north-south progress. When the sun reaches the right angle at noon, I know we've reached the right latitude. This makes sense. You're using the sun for both direction and latitude, just as you use stars at night. The sun is just another celestial guide, another tool in your navigation toolkit. You spend days practicing these techniques. You learn to estimate the sun's rising point, even through scattered clouds. You learn to feel its angle at noon by the length and direction of your shadow. You learn to read the waves it creates, distinguishing between the trade wind swell and other wave patterns. One particularly cloudy morning, Mao tests you. Which way is the sun rising? He asks. You look at the horizon. It's obscured by clouds, but you can see patches of light and shadow, and you can feel the warmth on your face. Based on these clues, you point. That way, you say, east-southeast, slightly south of due east. Mao checks, then nods. Correct. This time of year the sun rises slightly south of east. You remembered. This feels like a small victory, but it's significant. You're learning to navigate without being able to see your primary reference point to infer the sun's position from secondary clues. This is the kind of skill that could make the difference between success and failure on a real voyage. Historians have recorded accounts of navigators who could maintain their course through days of cloud cover, using subtle clues to estimate the sun's position. This wasn't magic. It was the result of years of careful observation and practice. The sun is more challenging than the stars, Mao admits, because it changes more. Its position changes with the seasons. Its path changes with your latitude. Even the time of day affects its position. But once you master the sun, you can navigate any time, in any conditions. As the days pass, you begin to feel more confident with daytime navigation. You can track the sun's movement through the sky, estimate its rising and setting points, use it to maintain your course. You're not as proficient as you are with stars that will come with time, but you're no longer helpless when the sun is your only reference. One afternoon, you're at the helm while Mao rests. The sun is high in the sky, slightly west of due south. You can tell by its angle that you're at about the right latitude for your destination. The trade wind waves are coming from their usual direction, confirming your east-west orientation. You adjust the canoe's heading slightly, compensating for drift, and maintain your course. Mao wakes and checks your work. Good, he says. You're starting to see how everything fits together. Stars at night, sun during the day, waves all the time. It's all part of the same system, the system that guides us across the ocean. This is the essence of Polynesian navigation. Not relying on any single method, but using multiple techniques together, cross-checking one against another. The stars confirm the sun, the waves confirm the stars, the birds confirm the waves. Everything is information, everything is guidance, everything is part of the pattern. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, you think about how far you've come. You're not just learning techniques anymore, you're developing a worldview, a way of seeing the world as full of information and guidance. The ocean isn't empty, it's full of signs, and you're learning to read them. Night falls, and the stars emerge, but now you understand that day and night are not separate, they're part of the same continuum, the same navigational system. The sun and stars are all celestial guides, all part of your mental map, all leading you toward your destination. The canoe sails on, guided by the sun's silent path across the daytime sky, and somewhere ahead, your destination waits. You've been at sea for weeks now, and you've learned to navigate by stars, by sun, by waves. But there's another set of guides, living guides, that can help you find land when nothing else can. Today, Mao is going to teach you about birds. Birds are the ocean's messengers, Mao says. They can tell you things that no wave, no star, no sun can reveal, if you know how to read them. You look up, and there are birds everywhere, white terns diving for fish, boobies circling overhead, noddies skimming the waves. At first glance, they all seem the same, just birds doing bird things. But Mao is telling you that each species has its own behavior, its own range, its own message for the observant navigator. Different birds have different relationships with land, Mao explains. Some birds stay close to land, never venturing far from their nesting grounds. Others roam widely across the open ocean, traveling hundreds of miles from any island. If you know which is which, you can use them to find land, even when it's beyond the horizon. This is brilliant in its simplicity. Birds can fly much farther than the human eye can see. A bird returning to its nesting island might be spotted long before the island itself is visible. And if you know that bird's behavior, you know that land lies in the direction the bird is coming from. Historians have documented how Polynesian navigators developed detailed knowledge of seabird behavior. They knew which species nested on which islands, how far those birds typically ranged, what their flight patterns meant. This knowledge was passed down through generations, becoming part of the navigational toolkit. Let me show you some examples, Mao says. He points to a white bird with a graceful forked tail. That's a white tern, or manu in our language. These birds often roost on islands at night and fly out to sea during the day to feed. If you see terns flying consistently in one direction, there's a good chance land lies in that direction. He points to another bird, dark and streamlined. That's a noddy. Similar behavior islands at night, ocean by day. But noddies have a particular flight pattern, a distinctive way of gliding over the waves. Once you recognize it, you'll spot them everywhere. Then he points to a larger bird, soaring high overhead. That's different. That's a frigate bird. These birds can travel enormous distances over open ocean. They're not reliable indicators of nearby land. But if you see a frigate bird diving for fish, that's different. It might mean there's a reef or shallow water nearby, even if no island is visible. This is incredibly sophisticated, distinguishing between birds based on their behavior, not just their appearance. A frigate bird soaring high might be anywhere from its home island, but a frigate bird diving for fish is a sign of productive water, which often means land is near. Historians still debate exactly how many bird species Polynesian navigators could reliably identify and use for navigation. Some accounts mention dozens of species, each with its own behavioral patterns and navigational significance. Others suggest that navigators focused on a few key species, the most reliable indicators, the ones that provided the clearest information. The key is observation, Mao tells you. Watch how the birds fly. Watch when they appear and when they disappear. Watch what they're doing, diving, gliding, circling, heading consistently in one direction. Everything they do tells you something. You spend days watching birds, learning to identify different species and understand their behavior. At first, they all look and act the same, just birds flying around. But gradually, you begin to notice differences. Some birds fly low over the water, others soar high overhead. Some fly alone, others in flocks. Some fly in straight lines, others in meandering patterns. Each behavior has meaning. One particularly interesting day, you notice a group of noddies flying consistently toward the northwest. You point this out to Mao. Good observation, he says. Noddies returning to their nesting island at sunset. That suggests land to the northwest. You watch them go, feeling a mix of excitement and skepticism. Can birds really lead you to land that you can't see? But then you remember birds can fly much farther than the human eye can see. A bird heading toward its home island might be spotted hours before the island becomes visible. Historians have documented that Polynesian navigators could detect land from distances of 50 miles or more using bird behavior. This isn't magic, it's biology and ethology, the understanding of animal behavior patterns. A bird returning to its nest is like a homing beacon, pointing the way to land. Not all bird behavior is straightforward, Mao cautions. Some birds follow ships, hoping for food scraps. Some birds wander widely, searching for prey. Some birds migrate seasonally, appearing in different areas at different times of year. You need to learn which behaviors are reliable indicators of land and which are misleading. This is an important distinction. Not every bird is pointing toward land. Some are just going about their business, unrelated to any island. The skill is in knowing which is which. Here's something that historians still debate. Exactly how far did Polynesian navigators trust bird behavior? Some accounts suggest that navigators would follow birds for hours or even days, trusting that the birds would lead them to land. Others indicate that bird behavior was just one clue among many, to be cross-checked against other signs. What's clear is that birds were an important part of the navigational system, providing information that nothing else could. You continue your bird-watching practice, day after day. You learn to identify terns by their forked tails and graceful flight. You learn to recognize noddies by their dark heads and distinctive gliding pattern. You learn to distinguish between different species of boobies, each with its own behavioral quirks. One morning, you spot a solitary bird flying low over the water, heading consistently toward the northeast. You recognize it as a tern, and you know that terns roost on islands at night. Based on the time of day, late morning, you know this tern is probably heading away from its island, out to feed. Which way is its home? Mao asks. You think about this. The bird is heading northeast, away from land. Therefore, its home must be to the southwest. Southwest, you answer. Mao nods. Correct. Now, is that consistent with our other information? You check your mental map. You're sailing roughly east-northeast, aiming for an island at a higher latitude. Southwest would be roughly back toward your starting point. This isn't contradictory, it's just confirmation that you're still in open ocean, not yet approaching your destination. Good, Mao says. You're learning to cross-check information. Birds tell you one thing, stars tell you another, waves tell you a third. When everything aligns, you know you're on the right course. When something doesn't fit, you need to figure out why. This is the essence of navigation, not relying on any single source of information, but using multiple sources to triangulate your position and verify your course. Birds, stars, waves, sun, they all contribute to the picture. As the weeks pass, you become more confident in your bird knowledge. You can identify the common species, understand their behavior patterns, use them as navigational clues. You're not an expert yet, that will take years, but you're no longer completely lost in a sky full of birds. One particularly clear day, you spot a flock of terns diving for fish. This in itself isn't unusual. Terns often feed on schools of fish near the surface, but what catches your attention is that they're staying in one area, diving repeatedly, not moving on. This suggests the fish school is large and concentrated, which often happens near underwater features, reefs, sea mounts, islands. Mao notices what you're looking at. Good observation, he says. Feeding birds can indicate productive water, which often means land is near, even if you can't see it yet. You watch the birds, feeling a sense of anticipation. Are you approaching land? It's hard to say for sure, but the birds are suggesting that you might be. Historians have noted that Polynesian navigators could use bird behavior to not only detect land, but to estimate how close it was. Certain species indicated land within a day's sail. Others indicated land within several hours. This allowed navigators to prepare for landfall, to alert the crew, to prepare the canoe, to start watching for other signs. As the sun begins to set, the terns finish feeding and head off toward the northeast. You watch them go, marking the direction. Northeast, not your destination, but perhaps an indication that there's land in that direction. Another island, another waypoint in the vast Pacific. The birds disappear into the gathering darkness, but they've left you with valuable information. The ocean isn't empty. It's full of living guides, each with its own message, each contributing to your understanding of where you are and where you're going. Night falls and the stars emerge. But now you have another tool in your navigational toolkit, not just celestial bodies and wave patterns, but living creatures that can guide you toward land. The ocean is full of information, and you're learning to read it all. You've learned to navigate by stars, by sun, by waves, by birds. But there's one more set of signs. Signs that appear where sky meets ocean, where the horizon holds secrets that most people never notice. Today, Mao is going to teach you about clouds. Clouds are the ocean's way of showing you what's hidden, Mao says. Islands are too small to see from a distance, but their effects on the atmosphere can be seen from many miles away if you know what to look for. You look at the horizon. It's a clear day, and the sky is mostly blue with scattered cumulus clouds, puffy white clouds drifting lazily on the breeze. They all look the same to you, just clouds doing cloud things. But Mao is telling you that some of these clouds are different, that they carry information about islands beyond the horizon. Different clouds mean different things, Mao explains. Some clouds form over land because of the way land heats and cools differently than water. These clouds can indicate land even when the island itself is invisible. This is fascinating. Islands affect the air above them, creating temperature differences that lead to cloud formation. These clouds can drift away from the island, becoming visible on the horizon long before the island itself appears. If you can read them, you can find land that's beyond the visual range. Historians have documented how Polynesian navigators developed detailed knowledge of cloud types and their significance. They knew which clouds indicated land, which indicated open ocean, which indicated changes in weather. This knowledge was passed down through generations, becoming another tool in the navigational toolkit. Let me show you what to look for, Mao says. He points to a cluster of clouds on the northeastern horizon. Do you see how those clouds are piled up, higher and thicker than the others? That's often a sign of land beneath them. The island heats the air, causing it to rise and form clouds. Those clouds then drift downwind, becoming visible before the island itself. You look where he's pointing. The clouds do look different, more organized, more substantial than the scattered clouds around them. Could they really be indicating land? Historians still debate exactly how reliable cloud detection was for finding land. Clouds can form for many reasons, not just islands. Weather systems can create cloud patterns that mimic land-induced clouds. The wind can carry clouds far from their source, potentially misleading a navigator. What's clear is that Polynesian navigators considered cloud reading an important skill, but one that needed to be cross-checked against other signs. Not all clouds are straightforward, Mao cautions. Some clouds form over open ocean, unrelated to any island. Some clouds are carried long distances by the wind, far from whatever created them. You need to learn which clouds are reliable indicators and which are misleading. He points to a different set of clouds, thin, wispy streaks high in the sky. Those are cirrus clouds, ice clouds formed at high altitudes. They're often associated with weather fronts, not islands. They can be useful for predicting weather changes, but they're not reliable land indicators. This makes sense. Different cloud types form under different conditions, and only some of those conditions are related to islands. The skill is in knowing which is which. You spend days watching clouds, learning to identify different types and understand what they mean. At first, they all look the same, just white shapes in a blue sky. But gradually, you begin to notice differences. Some clouds are tall and thunderhead-like. Some are flat and layered. Some are thin and wispy. Each type has its own meaning. Here's something that historians find interesting. Polynesian navigators could distinguish between clouds formed over different types of islands. High volcanic islands created different cloud patterns than low coral atolls. Lush vegetated islands created different clouds than barren islands. This level of detail allowed navigators to not only find land, but to identify what kind of land they were approaching. Different islands create different cloud signatures, Mao explains. A high volcanic island heats the air more than a low atoll, creating taller clouds. A lush island releases more moisture into the air, creating thicker clouds. An experienced navigator can look at a cloud and know what kind of island lies beneath it. This is incredibly sophisticated, using clouds to not just detect land but to identify its characteristics. It suggests a level of observational skill that most modern people never develop. One particularly clear afternoon, you notice a cloud formation on the horizon that looks different from the others. It's taller, more organized, like a pillar rising from the ocean. You point it out to Mao. "Good," he says. "That's probably a cloud formed over an island. The question is, which direction is the wind blowing, and how far has that cloud drifted from its source?" You think about this. The trade winds are blowing from the east-southeast. If that cloud formed over an island and then drifted with the wind, the island would be upwind to the east-southeast of the cloud. "East-southeast of the cloud," you answer. Mao nods. "Correct. Now, is that consistent with our other information?" You check your mental map. You're sailing east-northeast. If there's an island east-southeast of the cloud, and the cloud is on the northeastern horizon, then the island would be roughly off your port bow, perhaps a day's sail away. "It could be consistent," you say slowly. "We might be approaching an island." "Maybe," Mao says, "but clouds can be misleading. Let's watch for other signs. Birds, changes in wave patterns, changes in watercolor. Everything needs to confirm everything else." This is the key principle of Polynesian navigation. Triangulation. No single sign is trusted completely. Birds need to confirm clouds. Clouds need to confirm waves. Waves need to confirm stars. Everything cross-checks everything else, building a picture of where you are and what's ahead. As the afternoon progresses, you continue watching the cloud formation. It doesn't move much, which suggests it might be continuously forming over something, an island perhaps. And you begin to notice other signs. There are more birds in that direction, terns and noddies, species that typically stay near land. The wave pattern seems slightly different in that area, as if the swell is being affected by something. By evening, you're becoming convinced that there's land ahead. Mao hasn't confirmed it, but he also hasn't contradicted your observations. He just watches, letting you practice your skills and draw your own conclusions. Historians have recorded accounts of navigators who could detect land from distances of 100 miles or more using a combination of cloud patterns, bird behavior, and wave changes. This wasn't magic, it was the result of centuries of accumulated knowledge, passed down and refined over generations. Cloud reading is one of the more challenging navigational skills, Mao admits, as the sun begins to set. Clouds can be subtle, easily confused with other cloud types. They can be carried far from their source, creating misleading information. But when all the signs align, clouds, birds, waves, everything pointing the same direction, that's when you can trust that land is near. As darkness falls, the cloud formation disappears into the night, but you're still thinking about it. Are you really approaching land? After weeks at sea, the possibility feels almost too good to be true. But the signs are there, if you know how to read them. Night passes, and dawn breaks with a sky painted in brilliant colors. And there, on the horizon where you saw the clouds yesterday, you see something else, something real, something solid, something you've been dreaming about for weeks. Land. It's just a smudge on the horizon, barely visible. But it's there. An island. Real land. Not just a guess or a hope. And as the canoe sails closer, the smudge resolves into shapes, the dark line of an island, the green of vegetation, the white of breaking waves on a reef. You did it. You found land not by luck, but by skill. You read the clouds, watched the birds, felt the waves, and all of them told you the same thing. Land was ahead. Mal claps you on the shoulder. "Good work," he says. "You're learning to see what's really there. Not just what your eyes show you, but what all your senses tell you. The ocean speaks to those who know how to listen. You don't have words for what you're feeling: relief, joy, pride, exhaustion. It's all of those things and none of them. You're just incredibly grateful to be here, to have made it, to have found land in the middle of this vast, empty ocean." The canoe sails toward the island, and as you approach, you realize that this is just the beginning. There are more islands out there, more voyages to make, more navigational skills to master. But you've proven something to yourself, that you can do this. You can navigate the largest ocean on Earth using nothing but knowledge, skill, and observation. The island grows larger as you approach, and you see details: a lagoon, a beach, palm trees waving in the breeze. It's beautiful, and it's real, and you found it. The ocean is full of secrets, but you're learning to read them all. You've successfully navigated to your first island, an achievement that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. But as you stand on the beach, watching the waves roll in, Mal reminds you that finding the island was only part of the journey. The real challenge is remembering how you got there, so you can find your way back and to other destinations on future voyages. Navigation is not just about finding land, Mal says. It's about building a mental map of the entire ocean. Every island, every route, every star path, every wave pattern, and that map lives in your memory. You're about to learn about the most remarkable tool in the Polynesian Navigators toolkit: memory. Without written charts or navigation instruments, Polynesian navigators carried entire maps of the Pacific in their heads, detailed mental representations of island positions, star courses, distances, and more. This was no small feat, considering that the Polynesian world covered millions of square miles of ocean. Every voyage you make adds to your mental map, Mao explains. You remember the stars you used to find your way. You remember the wave patterns you encountered. You remember how long it took to sail from one place to another, and what you saw along the way. All of that becomes part of your internal navigation system. Historians consider this one of the most impressive aspects of Polynesian navigation: the development and maintenance of detailed mental maps covering vast areas of ocean. These maps weren't just pictures, they were functional representations that could be used for planning and executing voyages. "Let me show you how I remember a voyage," Mao says. He leads you to a shady spot under a palm tree and draws in the sand with a stick. "This is our home island," he says, drawing a small circle. "This is where we just came from," he says, drawing another circle some distance away. "And this is the star path I used to get from there to here." He draws curved lines connecting the circles, representing the paths of specific stars. "We sailed toward the rising point of this star until we reached the latitude of our destination, then maintained that latitude until the island appeared." This is brilliant a way to remember voyages as sequences of star bearings and latitude markers. By associating each island with specific stars, a navigator could remember entire routes as star paths. Historians still debate exactly how Polynesian navigators structured their mental maps. Some think they used a system similar to latitude and longitude, with each island associated with a particular zenith star and a particular bearing from a reference point. Others believe the system was more route-based, with navigators remembering sequences of star courses for specific journeys. What everyone agrees on is that these mental maps were incredibly detailed and accurate. "Not every journey is a straight line," Mao continues. Sometimes you need to sail indirectly to avoid unfavorable winds, to stop at intermediate islands for supplies, to follow known routes. Your mental map needs to account for all of this. He draws more circles and lines, creating a network of islands and routes. This island here, it's a waypoint. We stop there to resupply on longer voyages. That island there, it's a reference point. We use it to orient ourselves when sailing through this region. You begin to understand the complexity of what navigators carried in their heads. It wasn't just a matter of knowing where islands were, it was knowing the relationships between them, the routes that connected them, the practical considerations that affected voyaging. This was a living, functional knowledge system. Here's something that historians find fascinating. Polynesian navigators could plan multi-leg voyages across thousands of miles of ocean, accounting for seasonal wind patterns, currents, and the locations of intermediate islands for resupply. This required not just accurate mental maps, but a deep understanding of environmental conditions and how they changed throughout the year. Memory is like a muscle, Mao tells you. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. At first, you'll struggle to remember everything, but with practice, you'll be able to recall entire voyages in detail, the stars you used, the days you spent at sea, the landmarks you encountered along the way. He begins teaching you memory techniques specific to navigation. Some involve visualization, imagining the journey as a series of images or stories. Others involve repetition, reciting the details of a voyage until they're committed to memory. Others involve association, linking new information to things you already know. Let's practice with the voyage we just completed, Mao says. Close your eyes and visualize it. We started at our home island. We sailed toward the rising point of Altair until Arcturus reached our zenith that told us we were at the right latitude. Then we maintained that latitude, watching for signs of land. You close your eyes and try to visualize the journey. At first, it's just a blur, days and nights blending together. But gradually, as Mao prompts you, details begin to emerge. You remember the specific stars you used. You remember the day the birds changed, suggesting land was near. You remember the cloud formation that indicated the island. You remember the feeling of seeing land on the horizon for the first time. Good, Mao says. Now visualize it in reverse. How would we sail back to our home island from here? This is harder, but you try. You'd need to sail toward the setting point of a different star, maintaining a different latitude, watching for different signs. It's the reverse of what you just did, but it requires different knowledge. Not every route is reversible using the same stars, Mao explains. The winds are different when sailing in the opposite direction. The currents are different. You need to plan accordingly. This is an important point. Navigation isn't just about knowing where things are. It's about understanding the practical conditions of voyaging. The same journey can be very different depending on the season, the direction of travel, the specific conditions you encounter. Historians have noted that Polynesian navigators had detailed knowledge of seasonal wind patterns and how they affected voyaging. They knew when to sail and when to stay home. They knew which routes were practical in which seasons. This knowledge was crucial for successful long-distance navigation. Now let's talk about scale, Mao says. How far is it between these two islands? You think about this. You were at sea for several weeks, sailing at a consistent speed. Based on that, you could estimate the distance, but you don't have a precise way to measure it. We measure distance in days of sailing, Mao explains. Not in miles or kilometers, but in the time it takes to travel from one place to another under typical conditions. This island is perhaps 5 days of sailing from our home. That one there is perhaps 10 days. This makes sense. Without precise measuring instruments, time becomes the unit of distance. A journey isn't measured in miles, but in days, and even that can vary depending on winds, currents, the condition of the canoe, the skill of the crew. Historians still debate exactly how Polynesian navigators estimated and remembered distances. Some think they used pace counts, counting the number of strokes of the paddle or the number of times a particular star passed a reference point during the night. Others believe they developed a feel for distance based on experience, knowing how long typical voyages took. What's clear is that they had ways of estimating and communicating distance that worked within their navigational system. You'll build your mental map voyage by voyage, Mao says. Each journey adds new islands, new routes, new information. Over time, you'll develop a comprehensive understanding of the entire Polynesian world, not just your local area, but the vast network of islands that stretches across the Pacific. As you sit on the beach, watching the waves, you try to imagine what that mental map would look like. Hundreds of islands, thousands of routes, all carried in a single human memory. It seems impossible, and yet you've already begun building your own small version of it. You know how to get back to your home island from here. You know the star paths, the approximate sailing time, the signs to watch for. You've started, and starting is the first step toward mastery. You've been on this island for several days now, resting and resupplying after your voyage. But tonight, you're taking the night watch, a responsibility that falls to the navigator, and one that comes with profound solitude and even greater responsibility. The night watch is when everything is quiet, when you can truly focus on navigation, Mao had explained earlier, but it's also when you're most alone. The crew sleeps. The canoe drifts. You're the only one awake, the only one watching the stars, the only one keeping everyone on course. So here you are, alone on the gently rocking canoe, surrounded by sleeping crew members and a vast ocean of stars. The responsibility feels enormous. If you make a mistake, everyone aboard relies on you to catch it. If you drift off course, you're the only one who will notice. You take a deep breath and focus on your task. Your job tonight is to maintain the canoe's heading, ensuring that you stay on the star path that Mao has set. You're still several days from your next destination, and tonight's watch is crucial for staying on course. You check the stars. The canoe is pointed toward the rising point of a particular star, the one that marks your current course. But stars don't stay in one place. They rise, move across the sky, and set. So you need to periodically adjust the canoe's heading to compensate for the movement of the stars. This is something you've practiced, but tonight it feels different. Tonight, you're doing it alone, without Mao's guidance. If you get it wrong, there's no one to correct you. You take another deep breath and check the compass you've been building in your mind. You can visualize the star positions, the rising and setting points, the relationships between different stars. You know which star marks your current heading, and you know where it should be in the sky. Right now, that star has moved westward since it rose, as all stars do. You need to adjust the canoe's heading to compensate, turning slightly to keep the canoe on the same true course, even as the reference star moves. You make the adjustment, feeling the canoe respond. The crew stirs slightly but doesn't wake. You're alone with your task and your responsibility. Historians have noted that the night watch was one of the most challenging aspects of Polynesian navigation. It required maintaining focus for hours in the dark, often while fatigued. It required making constant small adjustments based on the movement of the stars, and it required bearing the enormous responsibility of keeping everyone on course while others slept. Hours pass. The stars move across the sky in their slow, predictable dance. You adjust the canoe's heading again and again, making small corrections to maintain your course. You check other indicators, the wave patterns, the feel of the wind, confirming that everything is consistent. Sometime in the middle of the night, you experience something profound. The fatigue that had been building suddenly lifts, replaced by a clarity and focus you've never felt before. You can see the star positions in your mind without even looking up. You can feel the canoe's motion and know exactly what it means. You're not just performing navigation, you are navigation. The knowledge has become so internalized that it's no longer conscious thought. It's just there, like breathing. Historians have described this state as flow, a psychological condition in which a person is fully immersed in an activity, feeling energized, focus, and complete involvement. This is the state that experienced navigators enter during the night watch, when navigation becomes second nature, when the canoe and the navigator move as one. You continue your watch, feeling this strange clarity. The stars are no longer just points of light, they're familiar friends, each with its place in your mental map. The canoe is no longer just a vehicle, it's an extension of yourself, responding to your slightest adjustment. You're not alone in the middle of the ocean, you're connected to everything around you, part of a vast system of guidance and information. Dawn approaches, and the stars begin to fade as the sky lightens. You've maintained your course through the entire night, making countless small adjustments, checking and rechecking your position. You're exhausted, but you're also incredibly proud. You did it. You successfully navigated through the night, solo, without making any major mistakes. Mao wakes as the sun begins to rise. He checks the canoe's heading and nods. "Good work," he says. "You maintained course all night. You want to celebrate, but you're too tired. You've just completed one of the most important tasks in navigation, the solo night watch, and the reality of what you've accomplished is just sinking in. The night watch teaches you something that daytime navigation can't," Mao says. "It teaches you to trust yourself. During the day, you can see everything, the horizon, the waves, the birds. At night, you have only the stars and your own knowledge. If you don't trust yourself, you'll second-guess every decision. But if you do trust yourself, you can navigate through anything." This is the essence of the night watch. Not just technical skill, but confidence and self-trust. You've proven to yourself that you can do this, that you can bear the responsibility, maintain the focus, make the decisions. You're not just an apprentice anymore, you're becoming a navigator. As the crew wakes and begins their morning tasks, you finally allow yourself to rest. You lie down on the platform, exhausted but profoundly satisfied. The night watch is done, and you succeeded. You're one step closer to mastery. The canoe sails on, carrying you toward your next destination. And somewhere in your mind, the mental map is growing each voyage, each night watch, each successful navigation, adding to your knowledge and your confidence. You're becoming the navigator you always dreamed of being. The stars fade from the morning sky, but their patterns are burned into your memory. You'll carry them with you always, guides for every voyage, every journey, every night watch to come. You've been sailing for days, making good progress toward your next destination. But today, the sky is darkening in a way that you've never seen before, a heavy, ominous darkness that suggests trouble ahead. Mao is watching the sky with a concerned expression, and you feel a knot of tension forming in your stomach. "We have weather coming," Mao says quietly. "Weather that will test everything you've learned. You're about to encounter something that every navigator fears but eventually must face, a Pacific storm. And you're about to learn how to navigate through chaos without any instruments, using only knowledge, skill, and instinct." Historians note that storms were among the greatest dangers faced by Polynesian voyagers. A severe storm could damage the canoe, injure the crew, and throw you far off course. But avoiding storms entirely wasn't always possible. Sometimes you encountered them despite your best efforts, and sometimes you had to sail through stormy seasons, because that was the only time certain routes were practical. "The key is preparation," Mao says, taking charge of the situation. "Secure everything that can move. Lower the sails, we don't want them torn away by the wind. Everyone to their stations, ready to respond to whatever comes." The crew moves efficiently, securing supplies, tying down loose equipment, preparing the canoe for rough conditions. You've practiced drills for this, but this is real, a real storm, not just practice. The first raindrops begin to fall, heavy and cold against your skin. "Now we wait," Mao says, "and we watch." The storm approaches slowly at first. Then, all at once, the wind rises from a breeze to a gale in minutes. The waves grow from gentle swells to towering mountains of water. The sky turns black, and rain falls in sheets so thick you can barely see your hand in front of your face. And through it all, you're still the navigator. You still need to know which way you're going, where you are, how to stay on course, or at least how to find your way back to course when the storm passes. "Keep track of our heading as best you can," Mao shouts over the wind. "Watch the waves if you can feel which direction they're coming from. That tells you something. Watch the wind, same thing. We may get pushed off course, but we need to know how far and in what direction." This is incredibly difficult. The wind is shifting constantly, first from one direction, then another. The waves are chaotic, coming from multiple directions at once. The canoe is being tossed around like a leaf, and you're struggling just to keep your footing, let alone maintain your orientation. But you try. You focus on the waves, trying to separate the main swell from the storm waves. You focus on the wind, trying to feel its dominant direction. You focus on the canoe's motion, trying to sense whether you're being pushed in a particular direction. Historians still debate exactly how navigators maintained orientation during storms. Some think they used simple techniques like noting the direction of the largest waves or the prevailing wind direction. Others believe they developed more sophisticated methods for tracking their orientation through the chaos. What's clear is that this was one of the most challenging aspects of navigation, and it required skill and experience that took years to develop. The storm rages for hours, perhaps for days. You lose track of time in the chaos. There's no day and night, only endless darkness and pounding rain and the roar of wind and waves. The canoe rides the storm, flexing and shifting, but holding together thanks to its ingenious design. You're exhausted, soaked, cold, but you keep trying to track your orientation, knowing that this information will be crucial when the storm passes. You notice that the waves are predominantly coming from the east-southeast, the direction of the trade winds. This suggests that even in the chaos, There's still an underlying pattern, a dominant swell that you can use for orientation. Eventually, inevitably, the storm begins to weaken. The wind drops from a howl to a gale to a strong breeze. The waves diminish from towering mountains to large swells. The rain thins, and you can see patches of lighter sky ahead. And then, suddenly, the storm is gone. The sky clears, the stars emerge, and the ocean settles into its familiar rhythms. You're still alive, still intact, still floating. But where are you? Mao looks around, assessing the situation. Good work maintaining orientation during the storm, he says. Now we need to figure out exactly where we ended up. This is the challenge of storms. They don't just test your ability to survive, they test your ability to relocate yourself afterward. You've probably been pushed off course, but how far? In what direction? You check the stars. The star compass is still there in your mind, and you can orient yourself using the rising and setting points, but that only tells you which way you're facing, not where you are. You need more information. We'll use multiple methods to triangulate our position, Mao says. Stars for direction, zenith stars for latitude, wave patterns for information about nearby islands, birds for signs of land. Everything we know, everything we've learned, we use it all. You begin the process of relocation. First, you check your zenith star. Arcturus is slightly south of overhead, which means you're slightly north of your intended latitude. The storm pushed you northward. Next, you check the wave patterns. The main trade wind swell is still coming from the east-southeast, but you detect a subtle reflected wave from the southwest. This could mean land in that direction, perhaps your destination, perhaps another island. Then you check the birds. There are terns flying toward the southwest, returning to their island homes after the storm. This confirms that there's land in that direction. Finally, you check the stars' rising positions. They're consistent with your estimated position, confirming that you haven't drifted too far off course. Historians have noted that this ability to relocate after being blown off course was one of the marks of a truly skilled navigator. Beginners could navigate in good conditions, but only experts could recover from bad conditions, finding their position again after losing it, and getting back on course toward their destination. We're north of where we want to be, and probably west as well, Mao says, summarizing the information. We need to turn south-southeast and sail until Arcturus is back at our zenith. Then we can turn east and resume our original course. You make the adjustment, and the canoe turns toward its new heading. The storm is behind you now, but the experience has changed you. You've faced chaos and survived. You've maintained enough orientation to relocate yourself. You've proven that you can handle one of the most challenging situations a navigator can face. The storm taught you something important, Mao says later, as the canoe sails smoothly through calm water. It taught you that navigation isn't just about knowing where you are in good conditions. It's about being able to find where you are after everything has gone wrong. That's the difference between a novice and a master. You know he's right. You've gained something through this storm: confidence, experience, the knowledge that you can handle the worst the ocean can throw at you. You're not the same navigator you were before the storm. You're better. The canoe sails on, carrying you toward your destination. The storm is behind you, but its lessons remain. You've learned that navigation is about more than stars and waves and suns. It's about resilience, about adaptability, about the ability to find your way back when everything has gone wrong. The ocean is vast and sometimes unpredictable, but you're learning to handle whatever it throws at you. You've been at sea for weeks now, on one of the most ambitious voyages any Polynesian navigator can undertake, the journey to Hawaii. This is a northern voyage, a journey into higher latitudes, a journey that will test everything you've learned. Hawaii is different from other islands, Mao had explained before you departed. It's farther north than most Polynesian islands. It's isolated in the vast northern Pacific. Finding it requires everything you know: star compass, zenith stars, wave patterns, bird behavior, everything. And now, as you sail northward, you're beginning to understand what he meant. The stars are in different positions here. Familiar constellations are lower in the sky, and some stars that you're used to seeing have disappeared entirely below the southern horizon. The weather is different to cooler, more variable, with different wind patterns than you're accustomed to. Historians consider the discovery and settlement of Hawaii one of the greatest achievements of Polynesian navigation. Hawaii is over 2,000 miles from the nearest major Polynesian island group, the Marquesas, and finding it required sailing north into unfamiliar latitudes, without any landmarks or reference points. This wasn't a journey that could be made by accident. It required deliberate navigation using sophisticated techniques. The key to finding Hawaii is its zenith star, Mao had explained. Hokulea, the star you call Arcturus. When Hokulea is directly overhead, you're at the latitude of Hawaii. So our strategy is to sail north until Hokulea reaches our zenith, then maintain that latitude as we sail east until we find the islands. This is brilliant, using a zenith star as a latitude marker, then sailing along that latitude line until you reach your destination. But it's easier said than done. Sailing north until a star reaches your zenith requires careful observation and adjustment, and maintaining that latitude while sailing east requires constant attention. You check the zenith stars each night, watching as Arcturus climbs higher in the sky. Each night, it's a little closer to directly overhead, a sign that you're moving north, approaching the latitude of Hawaii. But you're not there yet. We also need to watch for other signs that we're approaching the right latitude, Mao says. The weather will change as we go north. The water temperature will drop. The birds will be different species. Everything will subtly shift as we cross into Hawaiian waters. This is fascinating, the idea that different latitudes have different characteristics, different signatures that can be read like signs. You're not just navigating by stars, you're navigating by everything around you, by the subtle changes that tell you where you are. Here's something that historians still debate. Exactly how long did it take Polynesian navigators to sail from the Marquesas to Hawaii? Estimates range from 2 weeks to over a month, depending on winds, currents, the specific route taken, and the design of the canoe. What everyone agrees on is that this was a significant undertaking, a voyage of thousands of miles into unfamiliar waters. Days pass and nights pass. Arcturus climbs higher in the sky each night, approaching your zenith. The air grows cooler. The water feels different against the hull, denser, perhaps, or just colder. The birds are different. You see species that you've never encountered before. Then, one night, it happens. You lie on your back, looking straight up, and there it is, Arcturus, directly overhead, passing through your zenith. You've reached the latitude of Hawaii. Good, Mao says, confirming your observation. Now we maintain this latitude as we sail east, watching for signs of land. This is the next phase of the journey, sailing east along the latitude of Hawaii, waiting for the islands to appear. This can take days or even weeks, depending on exactly where you are along the latitude line and how fast you're sailing. Historians have noted that this east-west leg of the journey was perhaps the most challenging psychologically. After weeks of sailing north, with clear progress indicated by the movement of Arcturus. Now you're sailing east, with no such obvious indicator of progress. You could be days from land or weeks from land, and there's no way to know except to keep watching and waiting. We use multiple signs to detect Hawaii before we can see it, Mao explains. Clouds that form over the high volcanic islands, birds that nest on Hawaii and feed in surrounding waters, changes in wave patterns as the swell encounters the islands. Everything we know about detecting land at a distance. So you watch and you wait. The canoe sails east, maintaining Arcturus at your zenith, keeping you on the latitude of Hawaii. And you watch for signs, clouds, birds, waves. Days pass, maybe a week, maybe more. You're losing track of time, the days blending together in a routine of sailing and watching and waiting. Then, one morning, you see something different. Clouds on the eastern horizon, not random scattered clouds, but organized clouds, towering clouds that suggest land beneath them. You point them out to Mao. Could be Hawaii, he says, or could be a weather system. We need more information. You watch the clouds throughout the day. They don't move much, which suggests they're forming continuously over something rather than just drifting through. This is a good sign. Then you see bird species you don't recognize, flying in patterns that suggest they're returning to land. Another good sign. Then you notice a change in the wave patterns, a subtle reflected wave coming from the east, suggesting islands in that direction. All the signs are aligning. Historians have documented that Hawaiian islands could be detected from distances of 50 miles or more using these techniques. The high volcanic islands of Hawaii create particularly distinctive cloud formations, making them easier to detect from a distance than low coral atolls. That evening, as the sun begins to set, you see it a smudge on the eastern horizon, barely visible but definitely there. Land. After weeks at sea, after thousands of miles of sailing, you've found Hawaii. The canoe turns toward the smudge, and as you sail closer, it resolves into shapes: the tall peaks of volcanic mountains, the green of vegetation, the white of breaking waves on reefs. It's real, it's beautiful, and you found it. Hawaii, Mao says, and there's something in his voice, pride, perhaps, or reverence, or simply the satisfaction of a difficult journey successfully completed. One of the most remote islands on Earth, found by people sailing without instruments. Never forget that you're part of a tradition that spans thousands of years. You watch the island grow larger as you approach, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. You didn't just get lucky. You used knowledge, skill, and observation to find a tiny island group in the middle of the largest ocean on Earth. And you did it the way your ancestors did, without compasses, without sextants, without GPS, using only the signs that the ocean and sky provide. The canoe sails toward Hawaii, carrying you toward land and rest after weeks at sea. But as you approach, you realize that this journey has changed you. You're not just an apprentice anymore. You're a navigator who has successfully completed one of the most challenging voyages in the Polynesian world. You've found Hawaii, and you'll never forget how you did it. You've spent weeks in Hawaii resting, resupplying, learning about this new island group, but now it's time to leave, to return to the islands you came from. And this return voyage is different in important ways from the outbound journey. The return voyage uses different stars, different wind patterns, different strategies. Mao explains as you prepare to depart. We're not sailing north anymore, we're sailing south, and that changes everything. Historians have noted that return voyages were often more challenging than outbound voyages. The wind patterns are different when sailing in the opposite direction. The stars you use for navigation are different. Even the currents can work against you. A successful outbound voyage doesn't guarantee a successful return. Our strategy will be to sail south until we reach the latitude of our home islands, then maintain that latitude as we sail west, Mao continues. But sailing west is tricky because the trade winds are blowing from the east. We'll need to use a technique called tacking sailing at an angle to the wind, making zigzag progress toward our destination. This is sophisticated sailing using the wind to make progress in a direction that the wind doesn't favor. It requires skill and patience, but it's the only way to sail west in the trade wind belt. You check your mental star compass, preparing for the return journey. When sailing north, you use the rising points of stars in the east. When sailing south, you'll use the setting points of stars in the west. It's the same system, just applied differently. The canoe departs Hawaii in the early morning, sailing south away from the islands. You watch the volcanic peaks fade into the distance, feeling a strange mix of emotions, sadness to leave this beautiful place, but also excitement to return home, to apply what you've learned on a new kind of voyage. As you sail south, you notice the changes immediately. Arcturus, Hawaii's zenith star, moves south in your sky, no longer directly overhead. The air warms again, the water temperature rises, the birds change back to the species you're familiar with from lower latitudes. Everything is shifting as you return to the waters you know. Historians have noted that return voyages required navigators to develop a two-way mental map, not just knowing how to get from point A to point B, but also knowing how to get back. This meant memorizing different star paths for different directions, understanding how wind and current patterns changed with the seasons, and being able to navigate in both hemispheres of the sky. Days pass, and you make good progress southward. Then, one night, you reach the latitude of your home islands. You can tell because a different star, the zenith star for your home latitude, is now directly overhead. You've completed the southward leg of the journey. Now comes the challenging part, Mao says. Sailing west against the trade winds. We'll tack sailing as close to the wind as we can, making progress in a series of zigzags. It'll take longer, but we'll get there. You begin the westward leg, tacking back and forth across the wind. It's slow going, you're not sailing directly toward your destination, but at angles to it. But each zigzag takes you closer, and gradually, over days and nights, you make progress. Here's something that historians find interesting. Polynesian navigators had detailed knowledge of seasonal wind variations. They knew that the trade winds weren't perfectly consistent. They shifted north and south with the seasons, weakened and strengthened with the time of year. This knowledge allowed them to plan voyages for times when the winds were most favorable. You need to be patient when tacking, Mao advises. It's tempting to try to sail closer to the wind than the canoe can manage, but that just slows you down. Better to accept a wider angle and make steady progress. You take his advice, and the canoe makes slow but consistent progress westward. Each day, you check your position using multiple methods: stars for direction, wave patterns for information about nearby islands, birds for signs of land. Everything confirms that you're on the right track. Weeks pass. The routine of sailing becomes second nature, checking the stars at night, maintaining your heading during the day, watching for signs that you're approaching familiar waters. You're tired, but you're also confident. You've done this before, in the opposite direction, and you're doing it again now. Then, one day, the signs start to appear. birds that you recognize from your home waters, clouds that look like the clouds over your home islands, wave patterns that feel familiar, like the swell around your home atoll. You're getting close. Historians have described the approach to home as one of the most emotional moments in any voyage. Seeing familiar birds, recognizing familiar wave patterns, knowing that you're almost there after weeks or months at sea. It's a moment of profound satisfaction, proof that your navigation skills work in both directions. Finally, land appears on the horizon, not a strange new island like Hawaii, but your home island, the place where you started this long journey. The canoe turns toward it, and as you approach, you see details that you recognize: the shape of the coastline, the color of the lagoon, the specific arrangement of palm trees on the beach. You're home. The canoe beaches, and you step onto sand that you haven't felt in months. Your family is there to greet you, celebrating your safe return. But in the midst of the celebration, you feel something deeper than just joy. You feel a sense of accomplishment, of completion. You didn't just sail to Hawaii and back. You proved something to yourself: that you can navigate in both directions, that you can handle the most challenging voyages, that you're truly a navigator. You've completed the cycle, Mao says later, as you sit on the beach watching the sunset. Outbound and return, north and south, east and west. You've seen the entire navigational system from multiple angles, and you've proven that it works. You're not just learning navigation anymore, you're living it. You know he's right. The return voyage was different from the outbound journey in 1,000 ways, but it was also the same, using the same knowledge, the same skills, the same system of signs and observations. The system works in both directions, and you've proven that to yourself. The sun sets, painting the sky in brilliant colors. You're home, but you're also changed. You've seen more of the world than most people ever will. You've navigated the largest ocean on Earth, found remote islands, returned safely. You're not the same person who left this beach months ago. You're a navigator now, and the ocean is yours. You've been back home for weeks now, settling back into the rhythms of island life. But something has changed. You're not just a crew member anymore. You're a navigator, someone who has successfully completed long-distance voyages, and that brings new responsibilities. It's time to begin your apprenticeship as a teacher, Mao says one day. Navigation knowledge isn't just for you, it's for the community, and eventually you'll need to pass it on to the next generation. You're about to learn about the most important aspect of Polynesian navigation, not the technical skills, which you've mostly mastered, but the tradition of teaching and preserving knowledge. This is what keeps the navigational system alive across generations. Historians have noted that Polynesian navigation was always a living tradition, constantly being taught, learned, and refined. It wasn't written down in books or stored in databases. It existed in the minds of navigators and in the relationships between masters and apprentices. This made it fragile. If the teaching was interrupted, the knowledge could be lost, but it also made it adaptable, constantly evolving to meet new challenges. Teaching navigation is different from learning navigation, Mao explains. When you're learning, you're absorbing information. When you're teaching, you're figuring out how to transfer that information, how to explain something that you've internalized so deeply that you're barely conscious of it anymore. This is a profound challenge. You've spent so much time practicing navigation that it's become second nature. You don't consciously think about which star to use for which direction, you just know. But now you need to break it down, explain it step by step, make it understandable to someone who's never done it. "Let me show you how I teach," Mao says, and he invites a young person from the village, someone about the age you were when you started your training. The young person looks excited and nervous, and you realize that you probably looked exactly the same way when Mao first began teaching you. "Start with the basics," Mao advises. "Don't try to teach everything at once. Start with one thing, one star, one wave pattern, one concept, and build from there." So you begin. You explain the star compass, starting with just one or two major stars. You explain how to feel wave patterns, starting with the easiest ones to distinguish. You explain the concept of zenith stars, using the most familiar examples, and you discover something surprising. Teaching deepens your own understanding. As you explain concepts that you've internalized, you find yourself thinking about them in new ways, seeing connections that you hadn't noticed before. Teaching isn't just passing on information, it's a way of refining and clarifying that information for yourself. Historians have observed that this is one of the strengths of oral traditions. The act of teaching keeps the knowledge fresh and alive. Each generation doesn't just receive the information, they reprocess it, reinterpret it, find new ways to understand and explain it. This keeps the tradition from becoming static or fossilized. Not every student learns the same way, Mao notes, as you continue your teaching practice. Some learn by watching, some learn by doing, some learn by listening. You need to adapt your teaching to the student. You discover that this is true. Your young student struggles with some concepts that came easily to you, but grasps others that you found difficult. Teaching requires flexibility, the ability to find different approaches for different learners. Here's something that historians still debate. Exactly how formal was the teaching of navigation? Some accounts suggest very formal apprenticeships with structured curricula and specific milestones. Others indicate that learning was more informal, happening through observation and participation over many years. What's clear is that however it was structured, the teaching of navigation was taken very seriously. It was too important to leave to chance. There's also a sacred aspect to this knowledge, Mao says one evening, as you sit together watching the stars. Navigation isn't just a practical skill. It's the foundation of our ability to explore, to settle new islands, to maintain connections between distant communities. It's part of who we are as a people. You've felt this yourself, the sense that navigation is more than just a technical skill. It's a connection to your ancestors, to the generations of navigators who developed and refined these techniques. It's a responsibility to preserve and pass on this knowledge. Historians have documented that in many Polynesian cultures, navigators held special status, not just as skilled practitioners, but as custodians of cultural knowledge. This wasn't about power or privilege, it was about responsibility. Navigators were responsible for maintaining the connections between islands, for ensuring that the knowledge survived, for teaching the next generation. You'll eventually have your own students, Mao says, and you'll find that each teaching relationship is different. Each student has different strengths, different challenges, but the goal is always the same: to ensure that the knowledge survives, that the tradition continues, that future generations can navigate as we have. As you continue teaching, you begin to see navigation from a new perspective. It's not just about your own skills and voyages. It's about being part of a chain that stretches back into the past and forward into the future. You learned from Mao, who learned from his teacher, who learned from theirs, back through countless generations. And now you're preparing to teach someone else, continuing the chain. This knowledge has survived for thousands of years because each generation took responsibility for passing it on. And now that responsibility includes you. The stars shine overhead, familiar friends that guide you through the night. But now they're not just navigational aids, they're part of a tradition, a heritage, a sacred trust. You're not just learning navigation anymore, you're its guardian. You've been at sea for weeks on what will be your final voyage as Mao's apprentice, journeying to a new island, one you've never visited before, to prove that you can navigate independently. Mao is watching, supervising, but he's made it clear that this is your voyage. You're the navigator now. The journey has been challenging but successful. You've used all your skills: star compass, zenith stars, wave patterns, bird behavior, cloud reading. You've maintained your course through calm weather and rough, through days and nights, through moments of confidence and moments of doubt. And now, finally, you're approaching your destination. Dawn is breaking as you scan the horizon, looking for signs of land. This is the moment you've been working toward, the culmination of years of training, the moment when you prove to yourself and to Mao that you're truly a navigator. And there it is, a smudge on the horizon that could be cloud or could be land. You check your other indicators. Birds are flying toward that point, terns and noddies, species that stay near land. The wave patterns show a subtle reflection from that direction. The clouds above the smudge are organized and stationary, suggesting they're forming over something rather than just drifting through. All the signs align. It's land. As the sun rises and the sky brightens, the smudge resolves into shapes: the dark line of an island, the green of vegetation, the white of breaking waves on a reef. It's real, it's beautiful, and you found it. Mao comes to stand beside you as the island grows clearer. "Well done," he says quietly. "You've navigated across hundreds of miles of open ocean and found a small island that you've never seen before. You didn't get lucky. You used skill, knowledge, and observation. You're a navigator now." The words settle over you like a blessing. You're a navigator. It's what you've dreamed of for years, what you've worked toward through countless hours of study and practice. And now it's real. The canoe approaches the island, and as you get closer, you see details: a lagoon, a beach, palm trees, perhaps signs of human habitation. This is a real place, not just a point on a mental map. And you found it. Historians have described the moment of landfall as one of the most profound experiences in any navigator's life. A mixture of relief, joy, pride, and awe. After weeks or months at sea, with nothing but ocean in every direction, seeing land is almost overwhelming. It validates everything. All the learning, all the practice, all the faith in the system of navigation that you've been taught. The canoe beaches, and you step onto sand that you've never felt before. The air smells different here, familiar tropical scents, but with subtle variations that tell you this is a new place. The birds sound different, the plants are different. Everything is slightly new and strange. But beneath the strangeness, there's also familiarity. This is still the Pacific, still the ocean you've learned to read, still the world of Polynesian navigation. The techniques that work at home work here too. The star compass points the same directions. The wave patterns follow the same principles. The birds follow the same behaviors. You're in a new place, but you're operating in a familiar system. Mao joins you on the beach. "This is what all the training was for," he says. "Not just so you can make voyages, but so you can find new places, expand our world, connect with distant peoples." Navigation isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about exploration, discovery, connection. You think about this as you look around at your new surroundings. Navigation allowed your ancestors to explore the Pacific, to find and settle thousands of islands, to create a network of interconnected societies spanning millions of square miles. And now you're part of that tradition, exploring, discovering, connecting. Historians consider the Polynesian settlement of the Pacific one of the greatest achievements in human history, comparable to the exploration of space in our own time. And you've just participated in that tradition, continuing the work that your ancestors began thousands of years ago. There's one more thing, Mao says, and his tone becomes serious. Now that you've proven yourself as a navigator, you have a responsibility. The knowledge I've given you isn't just yours. It belongs to the community, to the tradition, to future generations. You need to pass it on, just as I received it and passed it on to you. You nod. You understand. Navigation isn't just a skill, it's a sacred trust, a heritage that must be preserved and transmitted. You're part of a chain that stretches back countless generations, and now it's your responsibility to continue that chain. The sun rises higher, painting the sky in brilliant colors. This new island is beautiful, but it's more than that. It's proof that the system works, that ancient knowledge can guide you across vast distances to find new places. You didn't need modern instruments or technology. You needed only the signs that the ocean and sky provide, and the knowledge to read them. As you stand on this new beach, watching the waves roll in, you feel a profound sense of connection, not just to Mao and your teachers, but to all the navigators who came before, all the ones who developed these techniques through careful observation and practice. You're part of something larger than yourself, a tradition that spans thousands of years and thousands of miles. The canoe sits on the beach behind you, your partner in this journey. But the real partnership is with the knowledge itself, the accumulated wisdom of generations, the system of signs and observations that guides you across the largest ocean on Earth. This knowledge is yours now, but it also belongs to everyone who came before, and everyone who will come after. You're a navigator. You've found your way across the open ocean to a new island. And in doing so, you've proven something important, that ancient wisdom still works, that traditional knowledge has value, that humans can accomplish remarkable things using only observation, memory, and skill. The sun continues to rise, bringing a new day to a new island. But for you, it's more than a new day. It's a new chapter in your life, the chapter where you're no longer just learning navigation, but living it, using it, and eventually passing it on. The ocean stretches endlessly before you, full of islands to discover and voyages to make, and you have the knowledge to navigate them all. You have arrived, closing, and so our journey comes to an end, dear friend, here in the gentle quiet of the night. You've traveled across the vast Pacific Ocean in your imagination, learning to read the waves and stars and birds the way ancient Polynesian navigators did. You've felt what it's like to stand on a beach and look out at emptiness, then learn to see that emptiness as full of information, full of signs, full of guidance, full of a language that can be learned if you know how to listen. I hope tonight's story has given you more than just facts about navigation techniques. I hope it's given you a sense of connection to the remarkable people who developed these skills, people who crossed the largest ocean on Earth without compasses or sextants, using only observation, memory, and courage. They weren't magical beings. They were ordinary humans who paid extraordinary attention to the world around them, and maybe, just maybe, there's something in that for all of us. We live in a world full of information too, If we know how to look, the sky tells us things. If we learn to read it, the natural world speaks to us. If we learn to listen, we don't need to be navigating the open ocean to benefit from the skills of observation and attention that those ancient navigators developed. So, as you close your eyes and let the day slip away, I hope you'll carry a piece of this with you. The knowledge that you're more capable than you might realize, that the world around you is full of guidance if you know how to look for it, that you're connected to generations of humans who faced vast emptiness and found their way through. Breathe deeply now and let all the tension of the day float away like clouds on a gentle breeze. Let your muscles relax. Let your mind quiet. Let your heart find peace. You are safe, you are capable, and tomorrow is a new day full of new possibilities. The stars are shining overhead, just as they shone for the ancient navigators. The ocean is breathing, just as it has for millennia. And you are here, part of this vast, beautiful world, connected to everything that has come before and everything that will come after. Sleep well, dear friend. May your dreams be gentle, your rest be deep, and your heart be light. Good night. 大鱼，全文结束，晚安。